Alrighty, well, welcome back. Hope you guys enjoyed a bit of food. I know we did.
Yes.
What I want to do before we go anywhere else is I do want to go back and just kind of close everything out with a couple of demos. Basically, what I did for troubleshooting while we were at lunch, this problem was actually fixed within about 2 minutes. Was I just took the advice from the IT crowd. Have you tried? Thank you for calling the help desk. Have you tried turning it off, turning it back on again? Rebooted the server, and suddenly everything started working again.
Magic.
So yeah, yay! Step one of troubleshooting there. So what I want to do is just kick back over to my system here. There we go, and let's maximize that. And there we go. Okay, while that's coming up, there we go. So what I want you to notice is, let me go back to my search site, which I really should add into one of the tabs that automatically opens. So now if I go in and I do a search for, let's say, Microsoft, and hit enter, you'll now notice that I'm getting Microsoft. So yay, everything is now working. Just to prove the point, if I open back up Visual Studio here, open back up the MVA demos, chugga. What you're going to notice right over here, let's fire up my server-side search, open up the program there. Again, there's all of my code, little Control F5 action, chugga. And what you're going to notice is, sure enough, there is, all of my results. And if I kick on over, I think that's the client-side one. It is. This one is going to be for Geek Trainer. Let's go ahead and launch this. And yay!
There we go.
Okay,
right.
So there it all is. So you'll notice it does in fact all work. I just needed to reboot my system.
When in doubt, reboot.
Exactly. Now, one other real quick aside, if you don't mind, we did get a question about in the chat about this cool little window right over here. This is actually something that's new to Visual Studio 2013. It's that scroll bar map. And I just want to highlight real quickly here that if you go into Tools and Options, under Text Editor, All Languages, Scroll Bars, inside of here you can enable that. All you have to do is just simply choose the map mode right there and hit OK. And that will give you that map mode everywhere. And I've fallen in love with this thing.
Very cool. I really like that.
Just fantastic.
I did notice that hanging out there on the right-hand side, but you know, I'm glad somebody asked.
Yeah. See. All right. So let's do this. Let me get back to slides here, and we'll do the little slide dance.
Oh yes.
Yes. There we go.
I'm telling you, if these giant surfaces, you know, whatever.
Well, they're not really surfaces.
I know, what are they?
They are planar. There's actually a little
Pixel
bottom.
perfect.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
the planar.
Oh, thank
this
you.
is probably the #1 question that we always get asked when we're doing these. But,
these are cool.
Yeah,
right?
they are. Yeah, they're actually
Now,
they're pretty slick.
I think when we come back and we do the SharePoint 2016 developing SharePoint Server Advanced Solutions, I fully expect there's going to be a camera here like a Kinect, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
Then, and you can do
everything will actually
your
be
PowerPoint
3D.
dance
You'll
like
just
this.
be throwing objects around.
That will be your gesture for switching from PowerPoint.
Exactly.
You just go like this.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
All right. So in any event, let's no segue possible. Let's get back in to customizing the search experience. Now, what we want to start off with in here is talking a little bit about search schemas and the different ways that we can customize how things are going to be crawled. Then we'll take a look at how we can see and control how queries are actually going to be processed and executed, how we can control the eventual results that our users are going to get, and then finally, how we can help clean up the metadata that might be available, in particular with items outside of SharePoint. So first up, let's go ahead and talk about our search schemas. Search schemas are a relatively new concept. They're new to 2013. And really what they are is the collection of all the different properties that you're going to have, all the metadata that you're eventually going to be crawling and then, of course, in turn, eventually be searching. Now, when it comes to our search schema itself, what it's going to contain is the mapping between our crawled and our managed properties and what it is that managed properties can do. Now, this sort of begs the question, okay, well, what in the world is a crawled property? What in the world is a managed property? And what is the difference between them?
But isn't it obvious?
Not quite.
No, I don't think so.
So let's start off by talking about crawled properties. And the number one thing that I want to highlight up here is the fact that all properties are crawled. So let's say that we've got a file share somewhere, and on that file share we've got a couple of Word documents. One of the cool things, of course, is that there's going to be metadata on there. Maybe the user went in and tagged the item. It's going to have the author, the editors, the created date, things like that. So if it's external to SharePoint, it's going to be crawled. If it's inside of SharePoint, our list columns, those are going to be crawled. And if you decide that you're going to go in and, say, start crawling BCS, which is one of the great reasons to use BCS, all of the attributes inside of there are going to be crawled. So everything that SharePoint sees, as long as it has some way of reading the value, reading the data, all of that is going to be crawled. And thus, in turn, all of the values that are inside of there are going to be available for search. So regardless of where it came from, it's going to be available for search. But here's the catch. What SharePoint's going to know is SharePoint is going to know the value itself, but it's not going to know where it came from. So for example, it's going to know that Harrison existed on this item. So if I go in and I do a search for Harrison, it will then return back that item. But it's not necessarily going to know, if it's just a crawled property, that Harrison was the last name. So if you remember back to our conversation about KQL, that keyword query language, one of the things that we're able to do is put together a query like last name : and then Harrison. Well, in order for that to work, SharePoint needs to know where that value came from. This is where our managed properties come into play. The big difference between a crawled property and a managed property is that with a crawled property, all that we get is just the value. With the managed property, now we know not only the value, but where that data came from. And thus, number one, we can then go in and do our property-specific queries. So if you want to say tag : or you want to say project name : you're now able to do that and search for items where that project name happens to be whatever value, not just simply that your value happens to exist somewhere. You're also going to notice that we could use this with refiners, which will give us the ability to drill down into different items. So let's say I go off and I do a query, and we get back, I don't know, let's say 1,000 results. Well, I don't want to go page through 1,000 results. So with a refiner, what I'm able to do is drill down into different types of items. So maybe one of the refiners would be all the documents that were created by Tom, or all the documents that were created by myself. I can then click the little link, and that will then take me into all the documents that just happen to be created by Tom. That requires a managed property.
You know, Christopher, I think that refiners are a very valuable part of SharePoint Search that a lot of people overlook, don't see necessarily how valuable they are. I mean, if you take a look at a standard.com website, you know, like a bestbuy.com or an amazon.com kind of site, where they've got a ton of products, right?
Yep.
We're talking about books,
yep,
you know, tech books, SharePoint books,
yep,
right? When you get those refiners with the managed properties, if you had a managed property set on your product catalog like that you're crawling, then you know exactly how many items fall within each of that category.
Yes.
Great for the user experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the last little option that we have with our managed properties is also the ability to do sorting. So that way, if I want to control how the items are going to go back to the user, what order they're going to be in, I can sort it, but only if, again, it is a managed property. We need to know where the values came from. Now, here's the catch about setting up managed properties. This is something that you're going to want to spend a little bit of time planning. This is something that you're going to want to get set up in advance. The reason for that is because anytime you add in a brand new managed property, it requires a full crawl. The way that crawling works is there's two types of crawls. There's an incremental crawl and a full crawl. And so what an incremental crawl is going to do is it's just going to look for all of the changes. And that's it. Well, if I've created an item, and on that item I added in a managed property. Let me redo that sentence. So let's say that I had an item out there. It's a document, and there's a property on there, let's say project name. Well, if I haven't modified that item, what's going to happen with the incremental crawl? It's going to come along and it's going to see that item and it's going to go, oh, okay, well, the item hasn't been modified. There's no reason for me to recrawl that item. So even if I've added in the managed property where I now say, hey, I want that project name and I want to be able to store that here, SharePoint isn't going to grab it because SharePoint's going to see that the item hasn't changed, and thus, as a result, it's not going to crawl it. What the full crawl is going to do is it's going to get rid of everything and start all over again. So that way, even if the item hasn't changed, it will be recrawled. Now, I know that some of you are probably thinking, well, wait a minute, Christopher. We've got a large enterprise, and we've got millions of items. And when we're talking about doing a full crawl, we measure that in days, not hours. Well, you do still have to do a full crawl if you want the data to be picked up. But you don't have to just simply launch the full crawl of all your content sources right when you create it, that you can stagger it. You'll just have to understand that any of the data inside those content sources that hasn't been full crawled is not going to have the managed properties applied until that full crawl executes. So let's go in and take a look at how we could set all this up. My little demo slide there. There you go. And let me come back out, do my little happy dance. Okay, and perfect. Alrighty. So move that over there. Let me HTTP :// SP 2013 dev. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up this little context list here. And what you're going to notice on the context list is if I go in and I go to the behind the scenes, that I can see all the columns that are inside of here. And what you're going to notice that I've got job title, and real quickly here, I'm just going to take out a little bit of insurance just because I want to make sure that this is going to behave the way that I'm expecting it to. I'm just going to real quick kick off a crawl behind the scenes. I want to make sure that it's going to pick that up. So just give me 1 second here.
And I'm going to cross my fingers.
No. Nope. So, no, this is going to be fine. So what you're going to notice right back here is that I've got job title. So if I click on the little link for job title and I come inside of here, you're going to notice that right up top here, my field is set to be job title. You can see that right up at the very top. So there's our little field. Now, what's going to happen behind the scenes when the crawler comes along is it's going to see everything inside of here. So let me go back to my contacts here, and let me create a brand new item. And let's go ahead and say Harrison and Christopher, which is spelled like that.
I'm glad you know how to spell your first name.
Hey, you know? And let me go ahead and give myself a job title of geek. There we go. And then I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to create a brand new item. And let's go with Reesing and Tom. And job title. And let's go ahead and say developer.
I noticed you spelled my name very quickly.
Yeah, weird. Huh. Okay, so let me go ahead and create that. I do want to do one last thing here, just to show the job titles that were created. I'm just going to modify my view here. Yes, it's a little easier to spell your name than it is
that's good. Well,
mine. A little bit longer. So.
What is for me? I've had lots of practice.
Well, there you go. Okay, so there's my my couple little entries there. There's my geek. There's my developer. Now let's say what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to go in and do a search and say job title : geek, or I want to be able to say job title : developer. This is where my managed property is going to be required. So yep, see, I stalled just long enough for that to be completing there, which should be perfect. And then I may need to kick that off one more time. I'm hoping not. But let's go into my search schema over here. And you'll notice that there are all of my, my managed properties. Now, my managed properties, these are all the ones that have been set up and are now linked to our crawled properties. Our crawled properties if I come back over here, go to my crawled properties, this is again everything that SharePoint sees. So you'll notice that I can go in and I could say, for example, job title, and I could do my little search. And this is going to pick up job title regardless of anything else. Now, all that this means is just simply that SharePoint saw it. That's all that this means. It doesn't mean anything else. So it's getting the values, but it's not actually associating those values with those items. My managed properties, on the other hand, this is where it will know that the value of geek or developer or anything else was associated with my job title. So I'm again going to do a real quick search, job title. There we go. And there is my job title. By the way, this is not built in. This is something I actually created for this. And you'll notice that if I go in and I say edit, let me scroll down to start here. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. There you go. This is where it's going to pick up all of its values from. So you can go in and choose where you want it to pick up the job title from. And so you'll notice that it's getting it from the people search. You'll also notice that it's pulling it from SharePoint. That's what the OWS is going to tell you. So if there was another mapping that you wanted, you could say add new mapping, go find the particular item. I'm just going to do a real quick search for job there. And you'll notice that there's another little job entry that it's picking up. So that way I can choose where I want to get all the data from. Now you'll also notice, if I scroll back up here, that I also have my queryable and my retrievable. That what my queryable means is that I could do a query just like that, where you see the author : Smith, that I could go in and do something like that. In this case, it would be job title : And then my retrievable is whether or not I want this to appear inside of the search results. And you'll also notice up top if I want this to actually be searchable with a simple query. Now, let me also scroll on down, and you'll notice the refinable and the sortable. One of the little notes that I want to mention about refinable and sortable is you'll notice that I've got the opportunity to specify this as active or latent. Latent simply means that it's going to store all the data, but it's not actually going to make it refinable. Active means that it is now refinable. By the way, the no obviously means that it's not refinable. Pretty straightforward there, which would mean that if I did go in and shift it from, say, active, from no to active or to latent, I would have to do a full crawl. The nice part about active and latent is that if you've maybe decided that, hey, this is something we're going to want for the future, but we're just not ready to turn it on yet, you can have SharePoint collect the data and then turn this on without needing to do a full crawl.
And that can be a big deal, like you said, if you have a lot of data.
Exactly. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick back here to slides. So I'm going to do a real quick thing back here. And just because this has me a bit nervous, I'm just going to go crawl everything. We'll just do that in the background. Okay. All right. So now, back over to here. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit about how we can start to customize the search experience. That implementing search and implementing search properly is extremely important with SharePoint. That one of the big keys to SharePoint deployment is user adoption. And one of the things that will drive people away from SharePoint faster than I think almost anything is a bad search experience. That search is pervasive in SharePoint. That basically everywhere you go, hey, do you want to do a search? Hey, you want to do a search? You want to do a search? Everywhere you go, you're being asked, go do a search. It's pervasive, it's very visible. So if the user has a bad experience, that's going to taint their opinion, not just of SharePoint search, but of SharePoint as a whole.
And I think you could say the opposite is true as well, right? For example, very well implemented search will increase user adoption and increase the customer satisfaction of the people using the SharePoint site, because it's a very powerful feature.
Exactly, exactly. So one of the big new features that we get with 2013 is a little thing known as a result source. Now, result sources replace the old query scopes. That a query scope and now a result source allows the user to choose where it is that they want to search. So they could decide that they want to search inside the file system. They could decide they want to search inside of, say, Exchange public folders, inside of a particular SharePoint environment. But also, maybe they want to search for items of a particular type. That maybe they're looking to search for all items that were created by a particular author or tagged for a particular product or project. That is what a result source is all about. Now, the way the result sources are going to be created is by utilizing what's known as a query transform. If you remember back to scopes, what we did was we went in and started creating sort of our own rules, so that if this property was set to this value, it would be included. If it was set to this value, it would be excluded, things like that. Well, now we actually get a lot more power. Now, what I can do is I can set up a query transform, which allows me to take whatever it was that the user was querying and either transform it or add additional properties to it. So again, let's say that what we're looking to do is allow for search of just a particular file type. So let's just say PowerPoint. So then what we could do is just take the user query and add on that file type colon and then PPTX. Because after all, as powerful as KQL is, chances are your users are not overly familiar with it. Chances are they're not going to be very comfortable going in and doing those style of queries. So even though, yes, the user could actually do this on their own, a lot of times they're going to lack the expertise to do this. So you'll notice that we can go in and transform how we want the query to be executed. And you'll notice that we can transform this query in a handful of different ways. That we could just simply go in and add on our own individual keywords that we might want. You'll notice that we get a query builder for doing this. You could also do it programmatically as well. We could add on our own property filter. So for example, file type $docx, particular author, the number of views that it's had. Now, once we go in and indicate the items that we want, we also get some control over how we want the items to be returned back out. So you'll notice that we have the ability to control our sorting as well. So let's go in and take a look at how we can control all of that by utilizing these query transforms. So,
you know, I think it's great that you pointed out there, Christopher, that in SharePoint 2010, there was one way of doing this, right? Mm-hmm. In SharePoint 2013, this is one of the places where search changes. And we know there's been a big shift, right, where a lot of what was being done with Fast Server has been moved into SharePoint Search. And this is one of the places that we're really seeing a big change because of that.
Exactly, exactly. Yep. So let me go in and set up a brand new result source here. And so you'll notice on my result sources that I've got a handful that are baked right in. And you'll notice that I can choose which one it is that I want to have as the default. And you could also go in and customize the search web part to allow the user to choose one of these. Or you could also just configure the web part to specifically use one of these result sources. Now, to set up a new result source, it's just simply click on New Result Source. Go ahead and specify a name. And let's go ahead and say Christopher's Documents. And all the documents that have been authored by Christopher Harrison. Because I know that's what everybody wants to search. This is what I'm going with. All right. So, you know what? Let me also do this real quick. I think this is going to make things just a little bit easier to read out there. There we go. Just do a real quick zoom into 125. All right. Now, what you're going to notice is that down below here, I can choose the eventual result type. So this could either be with people search results or SharePoint results. And right here is that query transform that we were talking about. And if I launch the query builder, from inside of here, get right on that, Rose, what you're going to notice is that I can then choose how I want my sorting to work. I could go in and start testing to make sure that everything's going to come back the way that I expect it. And by the way, over here on the search result preview, in order for this to work, and let me just kick back over to http:// SP 2013 dev :4242. And let me go back to my site settings here. And let's go into my site collection features. That inside of here, what you're going to notice is the search server web parts and templates.
Wow.
That needs to be activated. So if you're wanting this little results preview to work, this has to be inside of central administration.
Wow.
So go into central administration, go to your site settings, site collection features, and right there, that search server web parts and templates, that's the feature that we want.
That's a big asterisk.
Yes.
Because you rarely have to go into site settings.
Yes.
Features
central administration.
in central administration.
Yeah.
Right? You would not think to do that.
Yeah, but the last time that I can remember having to do that was in, doing that on a regular basis, I should say, was in 2007 and trying to get the SSRS integration.
And back in the old days,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
No, in 2013, you would never expect.
Yep, but there it is. Okay. So if I come back over here to the basics, now what you're going to notice is that I can then choose how I want to grab the item. So maybe I want to query after everything else has been executed. Maybe I want it just straight from the search box. And so what I could then do is add on a particular item, maybe for author here, and let's say equals, and then specify whatever value it is that you want. In my case, it's going to be a manual value. Let's go ahead and say Christopher Harrison and add my property filter. And now this would only return the items that have been authored by me. So if you want to go in and set up what used to be a scope, it's now inside of result sources. So much more powerful capability there. So no longer scopes, now inside of result sources. Or to quote They Might Be Giants, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. So in any event. Okay, let's go ahead and kick back to our slides here. And I just want to...
They Might Be Giants is one of my all-time favorite live bands.
Absolutely. That was actually the first concert that I ever went to was They Might Be Giants. They put on a great show. Excellent. Somebody else back there.
It works in the geek,
yes.
the experienced geek area, I think that joke does.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Wait for it. There we go. Okay. Now, one of the other big features that we had in 2010 was the ability to do keywords best bets. Now, if you were doing fast, you also had keywords there as well, but they were much more enhanced than what we had inside of just regular SharePoint Server Search. Well, remember that fast is now no longer. Fast and SharePoint Server Search have come together. So we do still get the same capability, but what you're going to notice is that it's implemented slightly differently, and it's in a different spot, known as query rules. Our query rules, again, going to replace that keyword best bet. And essentially what we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out what it is the user meant and help direct them, help guide them based on what it is that they meant. Now, what you're going to notice here is when I go in and configure it, I do need to identify the scope, or I guess result set, would have been a better way to put that, the particular conditions on the query itself, and then what it is that I want to make available. You'll also notice that I can choose the publishing settings as well. So as a perfect example, and I'm going to go with something that's particular to here in the US, and I apologize for that. But one of the things that's particular here in the U.S. is, of course, health insurance. And actually, my wife's work is going through this right now, end of year, end of every single year. They have to go in and re-enroll and go through all that. So if we're trying to, as an employee, maybe find, hey, where are the documents that I need to fill out so I can make sure that I'm still getting my, my health insurance, that's going to be very, very important for November and December. After January 1st, who cares? Doesn't really matter anymore because I'm not going to be able to change anything until the end of that year. So one of the cool things that we can do with our publishing settings is we can determine the date range in which we want that to appear. So I could go in and set up a little rule saying, well, if somebody searches for, let's say, insurance, that I'll go ahead and promote the items for re-enrollment in healthcare insurance. We'll have that work from November, beginning of November to the end of December. Once the end of December comes along, that will then just simply disappear, and a search for insurance will just return the normal results, back to just the organic results that you would normally get.
It's a perfect scenario for this.
Yeah, yep, and sort of the perfect time of year.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so you'll notice right here, we get our conditions, determine whether or not the it's going to apply. You'll notice that I've got the ability, first of all, down here at the bottom, to completely change the results that the user's going to get. I also have the ability to, in the middle, add in a result block or set up promoted results. Now, here's the difference between our promoted results and our result blocks. That our promoted results, if that little square right there represents the interface that our user is going to see with all their results, a result block would appear right inside of there. It would be called out, it would be flagged, it would be given the appropriate title, but it is going to appear as sort of part of the normal search results. The promoted results is going to appear up at the very top here. So if you fire up Bing and the first couple of items up there for the advertisement, that's what the promoted results are all about, and that will appear up at the top of our results window. You love my little drawing there? It really just looks like a 4-year-old just grabbed a crayon and just went at it there. So in any event, it's Picasso. There you go. See, it was abstract. It was abstract. All right. In any event, let's...
Reminded me of John Madden. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Yes. Brett Favre's Brett Favre. I want... There we go. Okay. So let me do this, sort of a proof of concept here real quick. Let me go in and do a search for, let's say, vacation. Everybody likes vacations, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do a search for vacation. You'll notice right now I'm not getting anything. By the way, this was expected because I don't have any documents that include the word vacation. Now, chances are if I'm doing a search for vacation, I'm looking for one of two things. I'm either looking for the time off request form, or I'm looking for the policy document that explains when I'm allowed to take vacation. So, never. The beatings will continue until morale improves. What you're going to notice is that I have the ability to promote results. So let me go in and add in a brand new query rule here. And I'm going to do this for just our normal generic SharePoint results. So let me add in a brand new rule here. And we'll specify our rule name. And let's go ahead and say vacation. And then down below, what you're going to notice is that I get to identify the condition. So I'm going to say matches the keyword exactly. And we'll type in, let's say, vacation. Let's go ahead and say time off. Let's go ahead and say PTO for paid time off, etc. So you just add in all the different conditions, and you'll notice that you've got multiple. And then from there, you can determine what it is that you want to return back. So if you want to change how the results are going to be ranked, you could do that there. So maybe you wanted PDFs to appear up top, you could go ahead and change the sort and make sure that certain item types are going to appear up top. If you wanted to insert in that result block, you can do that there. In my case, just because it's going to be the most obvious, I'm going to go with a brand new promoted result. So I'm going to click right there, and this will be our time off request document, and type in our URL, http:// let's say SP 2013 dev documents and time off request.docx. Although, you know, I'm going to leave this here, but I suppose if we're using SharePoint, we really should have a form set up in SharePoint, a nice little workflow to go along. You know,
forms and workflow.
Yes. To submit a time off request. Okay. So now let me go ahead and save that, and then that's it. That one of the things that I really want to highlight is the keyword query. That all of these are going to be done at query time, not at crawl time. So I can go in and I can do this and I can set this up without needing to do a full crawl, an incremental crawl, or anything else. So now when I come back in and I do a search for vacation, and I think I stalled just long enough, and I did.
Ta-da.
Now you'll notice that there's my time off request document.
Right.
Now the other thing that I want to highlight here is the fact that this document or this location doesn't actually exist. That if I clicked on the link here, you're going to notice I'm going to get a 404 error message because it doesn't actually exist. And that's one of the nice things. I almost sometimes, or I do sometimes, not even almost, I do sometimes refer to this as the anti-search. Because in order for search to work, it has to be completely organic. That it must be that the item exists, the item was crawled, the user typed something in, we found it. Not here. Then I'm specifically saying, hey, if you typed in this particular keyword, we're going to give you back this link, even if that link, as we see right here, doesn't exist. So if there is an item that for whatever reason SharePoint isn't crawling, but you do still want to point to it, you can add that in by utilizing the query rules. Cool. All right, so let's go back to my slides here. I've got a whole bunch of windows open. Let's fix that. There we go. There we go. There's my little dance.
And I'm just sitting here like amazed by the last demo. So, I haven't seen that before, and I think that's great.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, now, one of the challenges that we have when we're talking about SharePoint search is the fact that not everything that we're going to be working with is inside of SharePoint. That for our items inside of SharePoint, I get an awful lot of control over the metadata. I mean, we took a look this morning at doing managed metadata. It's sort of a clever name there. So it does give me the ability to actually control the values that are going to be inside of there, and I can do an awful lot of cleanup when it comes to the values inside of there, make sure that we've got some level of consistency. Well, that's great for things inside of SharePoint. But what happens when I've got items that are outside of SharePoint? How do I then go in and start to clean those up so that way we make sure that when a user goes off and does a search that they're finding the items that they're looking for, even if people have used, as part of the metadata, different values. So maybe they use different abbreviations that my user just wasn't expecting when they went in and did the search. And this is where we can customize how our data is going to be processed. Now, the first option that we've got here is a little thing known as an entity extractor.
Wow.
What an entity extractor will do is it will go look for certain keywords that you provide and convert them to whatever values it is that you want. So it's all about that ability to cleanse and structure your data. So that way maybe you've got different abbreviations for different job titles. What you can do is set up an extractor, so if somebody's flagged something with one of the abbreviations, the extractor, when that item is crawled, is able to pick up the abbreviation and convert that to be what the real value is. Now you can do this by looking for just certain words or word parts, which by the way would do things like case and accent insensitivity, or if you did want it to be exact, then you could go ahead and do that with word exact, which is the entire word, or word part exact, which again could be part of the word, but again, all the casing and everything else must be identical. Now you are limited to 12 extractors. Fast Search had unlimited. You are now limited to 12. Now in order to set this up, you are going to notice that we will need a CSV file. You'll also notice that we'll need to import that in. And then last but not least is you'll notice that this is going to require a full crawl. Now, I am going to come back in a couple of minutes and demo this. But before we get into that, I also want to highlight company name extractors. Because chances are, this is going to be one of the biggest things that you're going to be looking for. So if somebody is looking for, let's say, Microsoft, we'll use a company name there, we'll say Microsoft, that I might want that on the actual company property, but if a Word document somewhere inside the body mentions the word Microsoft, I would still like to be able to flag that as that company and still be able to refine that because after all, the document contained the word Microsoft, it must have something to do with Microsoft. This is where the company name extractors come into play. Now, what's unique about the company name extractors as opposed to just the normal entity extractors is that all of this requires that CSV file. We have to go in and import it. The company name extractor, because of the fact that Microsoft is basically guessing, hey, this is something you're going to use quite frequently, they baked this capability right in. And you'll notice we can actually just take down my little picture-in-picture there real quick, just because there's the word that I need. It's actually configured inside of MMS. That if you go back into MMS, you'll notice that there's a brand new, well, it is brand new. There's a group inside of there specifically for company extraction. So all I have to do inside of there is enter in all of my different company names, and now wherever it sees it, it'll pick it up. Now, here's the one little catch. When we're talking about any form of entity extraction, so this could be company name, this could be something that I set up on my own, there's an awful lot of places on a document that we could be looking. I mean, an individual document could have literally 30, 40, 50 pieces of metadata associated with it. And we don't necessarily want to look everywhere for company names or whatever other extraction it is that we're going to be utilizing. So fortunately, we get to specify which properties it is that we want to look inside of. And you'll notice that out of the box, body and title are pre-configured, but you can add this in for any other managed property, which also means in turn that let's say you go in and you add Microsoft in as a company name and you index an item and you realize, hey, wait a minute, this isn't picking up properly. Make sure that Microsoft appears inside of a managed property for that item and that it's set to actually do the entity extraction there. And we'll actually see that interface here in just a couple of minutes.
All right.
All right. Now, one of the other ways that we can sort of help our users out is through the use of a thesaurus and through the use of spelling correction. Now, what a thesaurus will do is it will allow us to go in and do our synonyms. So you'll notice IE could be Internet Explorer, Win8 could be Windows 8, SP could be SharePoint. Now, the real catch to a thesaurus here is the fact that it's just going to take whatever it is that the user searched for, say Win8, and also do a search for Windows 8. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, Christopher, what's the difference between that and, say, doing entity extraction? Well, number one, with entity extraction, this requires a full crawl because the items need to be modified during crawl time. My thesaurus is used at query time. The other big thing that you're going to notice, a difference between our thesaurus and entity extraction, is that entity extraction is going to change the index file. It's going to change the way that that item is stored. The thesaurus doesn't. And this really becomes important when we get into doing refiners. That with a thesaurus, it's not going to behave the same way as our entity extractors. We'll actually see how the entity extractors work with refiners when I get in and do my demo. Now, the other possibility that we could do to try and help our users out is our automatic query corrections. And so, you know, SharePoint, I swear to you, inside of my Office autocorrect, I probably have every combination of SHAREPOINT inside of there to recreate, to correct SharePoint.
Sure.
Just because my fingers sometimes just move too fast. So you'll notice that we do get a did you mean. Now, the nice part about did you mean is it can go in and do those types of corrections. The problem, however, is there are times when maybe we've got some set of letters that are put together that doesn't actually make any sense to SharePoint, but are something like a product name or a department name or something like that. You'll notice that it is possible to set up exclusions so that if a user does type something in, we can say, you know what, for that, just search for what they search for. Don't actually do anything else. I would mention that on the query web part, you can decide whether or not you want to do the did you mean, and if you do it programmatically, you can also decide if you want that there or not. Now, we've already introduced
Content Enrichment Web Service.
Yes, Content Enrichment Web Service. Now, one of the things that we've already introduced is the ability to do entity extraction. Now, the problem with entity extraction is it requires that I go in and set up a text file. And I have to actually import all of that in. Well, let's imagine a scenario here where we've got zip codes, postal codes. We've got email addresses that are tagged on an item inside of a file share. Well, I don't want to necessarily do a search for an item based on an email address. That I want to be able to say that bjohnson@somewhere.com is Bob Johnson. And so I want to be able to do a search, and I want to be able to find Bob Johnson there. Well, I don't want to put all that inside of a text file because email address is going to change. It's going to be relatively large. It'd be nice if I could maybe call off to a service and have it find or resolve that email address to the name. This is where our content enrichment web service comes into play. Now, what will happen is as your items get processed, it will send this off to the web service. The web service will then execute some code and modify the item as it goes into the index. Now, you can decide that you want to put everything inside of there. You can also do it just based on an individual trigger. So maybe something like the zip code is not null. Now, this does require that you have a managed property, and it does require that you go in and set up a WCF service. Now, for those of you who've done FAST, that right there is a big change. Because in FAST, you could do this, but it required server-side code. Now I can do this with a WCF service, which sort of just kind of keeps with where Microsoft is going with SharePoint. That less and less code is sitting inside of SharePoint, or I should say less and less of our code sits inside of SharePoint. I think behind the scenes there's probably a lot more code inside of SharePoint. I think there's a lot of
code inside SharePoint, I agree.
And there was in the past.
Especially with all that fast stuff
exactly.
coming in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all the user profile stuff, absolutely. Yeah. Now, with our content enrichment service, a couple of real quick things that you want to notice. Again, it is an external WCF service. So as a result, we're going to want to make sure that that's on the same network. You'll also notice that we can only have one of those configured. So I need to make sure that I build in the logic to do whatever it is that needs to be done to make all of this work. The last big note that I want to highlight about this is the fact that it does not alter the original item. So if I'm looking for something that could clean up the file system, clean up the metadata inside of a file share, where we've got all of our different email addresses and I'm trying to replace that with names, this is not going to do that for me. This is not going to work there. It only changes what's going to be stored inside of that search index. So this is nice for cleaning up search. It's not going to help you anywhere else. Now, as far as setting all of this up, it's actually relatively straightforward that you simply set up a WCF service. You implement the interface that, I guess I've got, you know what, let me just erase. There we go, and that was actually what I wanted. I want a pen, I wanted a circle, there we go. So you'll notice, simply implement that interface, set up our little method, deploy that out to a server, and then configure SharePoint to search out to that. All right, well, let's get in and take a look at doing our entity extraction.
All right.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me go ahead and discard that, and shoot. Oh yeah, got to do the dance. There we go.
It's an actual user interface.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up Notepad here, and Visual Notepad. And let me, first of all, kind of set up the scenario here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so back over here is our contacts. And what you'll notice here is that we've got myself and we've got Tom. And I'm listed as a geek and Tom is listed as a developer. Now, let's say in our organization that there really actually is only one job title that's going to apply there, that if you're a developer, you're a geek. So we're just going to say that that really is the only thing that I want here, is I just want to make sure that it's always going to be a geek. And let me actually add in just one more item just to sort of differentiate here. I'm going to go with, just because it's a name, we'll go ahead and grab Susan, who of course was here just the other day. We'll say DPE, and let's go ahead and save that. Perfect. So now we've got her listed as a DPE. Now what I'm going to do is I want to help normalize all of that data. So I want, as our key, let's say geek, And when it displays out, I want that to be displayed out as geek. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. But you know what? If we see developer, I want that to display out as geek. If I see DPE, I want that to display out as, let's say, Microsoft employee. And let's go ahead and do Microsoft employee, Microsoft. There we go. I knew I could do it. There we go. So we'll go ahead and save that. So now let me file, save as, and I've got a little shared folder. And this is going to be my entity extraction. There we go. And we'll just go ahead and save that out as a text file. Now, I want you to notice I did save that into a folder that is shared. That'll become important in just a little moment here as I go to pull that in. Now, in order to pull this in, what I'm going to need is my server search app. And this is going to be get sp enterprise search service. You know what? I should have gone one step further here. Search service application. Enter, and then import sp enterprise search custom extraction dictionary. That's a long PowerShell commandlet name.
That really is.
Specify my search application, and this is going to be my SSApp, and my file name. And this is going to be on whack local host, whack shared, whack entity extraction.txt. Now, one little thing that I want to highlight here is that this location does not need to be available from here on forward. It just needs to be accessible to me for this import. So that's all that really needs to be set up there. And then last but not least is the dictionary name. And this is going to be Microsoft User Dictionaries, Entity Extraction, and then Custom, and then Word 1.
Wow.
There you have it.
The one, I think, is...
Yeah, so one of the things that
there,
you'll notice, one is actually a key. Let me go back into my search service here, and I'm going to go into my search schema. And let's go to grab our job title here. And there's our job title. Chugga. And you'll notice down at the bottom here, that there is all of my different custom extractions.
Oh, I see.
And so you'll notice that there is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then so forth and so on.
Yes, all right.
So now I'm going to make sure that I've got one there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick off a full crawl. Because again, we need to do a full crawl here. So we'll just go ahead and hit start and let that do its thing.
So now, this was the difference between the entity extraction and the Thesaurus, right?
Yeah, this is one of the big differences between entity extraction and Thesaurus, is that Thesaurus is going to be at query time. This is going to be at content crawling time. So I do need to do a full crawl.
I want to ask you about something else you did.
Yeah.
I noticed that in the text file that you put together, you did geek and Microsoft employee and Microsoft employee.
Right.
So does that mean if you hadn't put one of those lines in, that something bad would have happened, I guess?
No, it's just simply, this is my way of indicating that that's an entry inside the hierarchy. So even though that, yes, I'm putting it in twice, it's just to make sure that it is going to pick that up as an entity. If it's not entered inside of there, it's not going to pick it up as an entity.
Okay.
So it's got to see that key name in order to pick it up as an entity. Otherwise, it won't.
All right.
Yep, I know it sort of looks a little bit funky there. But,
yeah,
well,
you know, it's repetitive and
redundant. And again, sort of doing the same thing over again. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, now what I want to do, and I can actually start to set up this little page over here, which is where we're going to see our little results, is I'm going to go in and I'm going to, let's just do a real quick search here. for, let's say, contact, and hit enter. And actually, you know what? Let's say I'm going to do a search for Harrison. Okay. So what you're going to notice is, sure enough, there's my little entry inside of contacts there for all items, and I've got everything inside of there. Now, what I'd like to be able to do is refine based on that job title that I set up here. Okay, so you'll notice over here that I've got my little refiners. Well, if I go in and I edit my page, I want to modify these refiners. And so I'm going to hit my little drop down here, and I'm going to say, edit web part. There's my refiners. Okay. I think this really deserves just a huge celebration.
Woo!
Woo! This is extremely cool. Anybody who's done 2007, has done 2010, and had to work with refiners, remembers that what you had to do was open up the XML.
Oh, yeah.
And add the refiner into
Right.
there. Are you ready?
We all love XML, though,
Well,
right?
yeah, I love XML. I just don't want to edit it inside of a text document. Right here. Choose refiners. Click that little button. Hey, you want to refine based on job title? Well, then all that you have to do is just simply say job title, and then just simply say add, and voila, it will then go ahead and refine everything based on job title.
I think that's great.
That's simple. That's all that there is
It's
to it.
configuration here.
Yep. Now, you'll also notice that I have my word extractor. Let me go ahead and grab that and add that in. There we go. And now let's go ahead and hit OK. And you know what? I'm going to change the display name on that real quick.
Well, isn't that handy? Because nobody wants to refine on Word Custom Refiner 1.
Exactly. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up our entity and our job title. Let's go ahead and hit OK there. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And let's go ahead and check everything in and continue. And let's go ahead and publish this out. Okay. So now let me just go back to my search. And I want to do a search for, let's say, geek, and hit enter. Is my crawl still going? Nope, my crawl's not going. Let me double check, make sure that I've got my managed property all set up. Search schema, my managed property, job title, and my job title, and queryable, retrievable, refinable, yes, active. And let's also just make sure, did I miss anything at all with the name job in it? I thought I had everything. I don't think I've got that one. Let me go in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, you go over here so I can see both of them. OWS, the Q. Okay, I think I've got everything. Oh, looks good to me.
Looks good to me.
Cool. All right. So let me go ahead and hit OK. And yep, my word extraction set to custom 1. That looks good. Let me hit OK. All right, let me just go back and double check this real quick. And let's just fire this off. And let me make sure that I've got my spdev listed there, and I do. OK. And start full crawl. By the way, while I'm there, while that's doing its thing in the background, one of the things that's worth highlighting here is this continuous crawl, which is new to SharePoint 2013. It actually goes either every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes, not technically continuous, but this is a really nice way to make sure that as items are added, edited, and otherwise, that you're going to see all of those results inside of your queries as quickly as possible. So definitely something worth taking a look at.
That one is, there's a lot of confusion about that one, I think, because it says continuous, right? And you're right, it's kind of scheduled. But I think what it really suggests is there's actually something new about the way that search is being done in 2013 compared to how we're used to how it has been done way back.
Yeah.
And I believe that what's happening there with continuous crawl is there's less churn, basically, right? And as opposed to an incremental search, there's kind of, it overlaps a little bit more.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it is going to be more efficient. That really, one of the main goals with SharePoint Server Search in 2013 was it is designed to be better prepared for the enterprise. So that is, you're dealing with those millions of items, you're dealing with that high level of churn, then everything is going to actually appear that much faster inside of there. Okay. Now, while that's doing its thing in the background, eventually what we're going to notice here once that completes is that we'll be able to go in and do a search for geek, and that will actually return anybody who was flagged with a job title of geek or returned with a job title of employee. What we'll also see is the couple little refiners over here, and when the refiners come up, you'll notice the one just for job title will actually show both geek and job title, or geek and developer, but the one with the entity extraction will just show geek. So that's going to be the big difference there, because what the entity extraction is allowing me to do is handle the fact that we were using those different names and make sure that it appears as just the one. So that's the other big thing that, that we're going to notice here. And I'm just going to give that a second to finish out.
And that's subtle, but I could see where that will have a big effect, right? So for there's all kinds of cases. Like, say, for example, you want to do a search on SharePoint, right? And you've got a managed property setup that allows you to see a selection between SharePoint 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013. But when you go down to the entity, to the refinement, you don't want to have that all listed out there because you're going to have other things, maybe SQL Server or something in there, right? And so you'd like to be able to group those together.
Exactly. There we go. That says idle. That looks good. And let's go ahead and one more time. Cool. So what should have happened is right over here, I should have gotten my, my little refiner. I'm just going back. I'm just double checking one last time that I've got everything set up. It is on my contacts. Yep, there's my job title. My job title is all correct. I've got the entity that didn't give me any problems whatsoever. Okay. This is just going to be my day with search. That's just going to be all there is to it. Yeah.
There's another managed property.
Yeah, there's another managed property, but that's not the one that's impacting me here. And yeah, word extraction, custom one. And what's interesting is it's actually not picking up the individual items when I go in and do a search. Yeah, because it's not picking up Christopher either. Not the contributors. You'll notice that it's linking to contacts, not linking to the individual item.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. To the list. Huh?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's not picking up. Yeah, it's picking up the list. It's not picking up the individual item inside of there.
Yeah,
cool.
When you searched on Harrison, did it return the
No,
item?
it did the exact same thing. It still returned the list. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In any event, so that's what should have happened is we should have gotten the little refiner over there. And the real takeaway that I want you to get out of all of this is just simply, and I'm just going to kick back on over to slides here, or at least to a two-shot here. The real takeaway that I want you to get out of all of this is that you do have the ability to customize search, because search is definitely one of those where it's not a one-size-fits-all. that you've got the ability to go in and configure all of that. And really, it does behave, I promise you. It just apparently only behaves on Wednesday when you're going in and making sure that it all works, and just not on Friday when it's time to do a recording.
That new wizard for creating refiners is really great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I think most people probably would have avoided before.
Oh, absolutely. I know I did.
SharePoint 2013, right?
Yep.
Because I did too. Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to have to go in there and modify the XML because you have no idea if it's going to work correctly if you typed in the right field, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So with that, let's go ahead, take a 10-minute break. We'll come on back, and I've done enough talking, Tom. How about you have at it?
I should take over some of the workload here.
Yeah,
huh?
I agree.
Yeah, all right.
I agree.
We're going to be back with BCS in a little bit.
All right. We'll see you guys back here in 10 minutes.